This will be part 3 of my testimony. It's good to see everybody, or I guess you only see me. However, let us continue. So as a review, I last time in part 2 I ended it with me leaving for Australia. And at that point, I was really searching, and I felt like I didn't belong anywhere. I was truly, truly lost in my life. I didn't know what to do, where to go, where I was headed. It was scary. I didn't know where to turn. So, I took the very first big opportunity that came, that gave me an opportunity, an out, and just to leave everything and to go find myself. Throughout my life, I've often joked with other people, telling people that I was a gypsy. I had a gypsy heart. I felt the call of adventure. I'd always had that desire to travel and see things for myself. I was never a person to stay in one spot. I quickly moved out of my hometown, and I never really stopped moving. And I moved from place to place. I never felt really satisfied. I never really planted any roots anywhere. I just had this need to see and experience, and I feel like I was always searching a little bit, but at this point in my life, I was searching on a grand scale, and really didn't know what I was looking for. Well, I started a rotation in Australia for a company. I had a 4-year contract, and I started going to Australia, and in 30-day rotations, and it was an amazing experience. I remember being very hot, very hot, and a lot of flies. But no, I was working in the middle of the desert, and that was okay for a little while. That happened. That continued on for a little while, and I would get days off. And the thing is about that is they would, offer me a flight to anywhere. I didn't have to go home to Canada, because Canada was so far, a 23-hour flight. They would fly me anywhere in the world. So that was really cool, and I did take advantage of that. And I started to travel to Thailand. Now, I had been there once before, and a really amazing experience. And because of my martial arts history in Muay Thai, I was interested in going back there and spending time there to train and to, learn more about the culture. I was fascinated by Southern Asia. So I started spending my days off there, spending a whole month at a time, back and forth, and just not going back to Canada at all. And eventually, the contract, the oil patch in Australia was having some troubles, and the oil company kind of let a bunch of service companies go. I ended up leaving, losing that contract. The company I worked for lost the contract, and I quickly zoomed home for Christmas. And I wasn't there more than a few days, and I got a call to head out to Iraq for a position out there. So off to the Middle East I went. I went as quickly as I could because I did not want to stay still. I think some people that are going through things can relate to that. When you're in a lot of pain and you're lost and stuff, you don't want to sit still for too long, because that gives you time to think about your situation in your life. And so you got to keep going, go. Don't stop. Like a shark, if they stop swimming, they die. That's kind of how I felt. I ended up working in Iraq. It was something far out of my comfort zone. I don't know if I would have done it if I had been in a good place, but at the time, taking a risk like that, this was during the times of not COVID, ISIS, Daesh, and there was a lot of terrorism, and it was a very, very dangerous place. 2014-ish, and there was a tremendous amount of security, and I don't know if I would have had the the courage to go do something like that if I wasn't desperate to get away still. I was still running, searching, looking. A lot of adjectives could be used there. So I transitioned to my job in Iraq, and I met a lot of good people there. I did. It was a really unique experience in northern Iraq where I was. It was the Kurdish area, in Kurdistan, Erbil, different towns, but based out of Erbil. And in that part of the Iraq, it is partially Muslim and partially Christian. So it's such a unique environment, and the whole country of Iraq is a very unique. There's no place in the world like it as far as religious diversity and a plethora of deep history, and a lot of it painful history. But it was such a unique experience. I was treated with a lot of respect, actually, and it was good. I succeeded there, excelled there, even. And I got to meet a lot of interesting people from a lot of different places in the world, the UK and Africa and Russia. I remember a safety meeting I had, which still makes me laugh. It consisted of about 12 different people from 12 different countries. And I may be exaggerating there, but I'm sure you get what I'm saying. There was all kinds of different languages being spoke. Most of the people there, English wasn't their first language, so everybody's trying to meet in the middle and speak English, and not very many people had a good grasp of that. So, I remember just listening to the safety meeting and listening to the different types of people trying to communicate with each other. It was hilarious, to be honest, and I just remember sitting back and listening to them just trying to establish a simple plan for a simple job, and how complicated it seemed. And it was just a very good experience. I learned a lot, and it was the first time I really observed the world for what it was and realized that you got to remember this was before woke culture, and everybody was still very much in the dark in North America. If you hadn't traveled a lot, you really did believe everything the media gave you, and everybody very much lived still in a big bubble. And that was my first awakening from it. I really realized what I was told, or what I was led to believe, was so far from the truth. But I don't want to get too far off topic. But it was a real cultural awakening, and I really realized and started to see the world and appreciate different people from different places, and really embrace those people and embrace those cultures, and just I loved every minute of it, to be honest. As I was working in Iraq, I continued to travel on my days off to Thailand. I had traveled so much there, and it just established kind of like a second home, or maybe just a home, because I didn't really have one. I considered it my home at the time, and I just traveled back and forth from Iraq to Thailand. I would spend my time in a condo there and just live as the locals lived, and that's basically how I've always traveled. I just want to immerse myself with the people. That's where I get the most out of. And it was, I really loved it. I loved spending time, training and just, like I said, eating the food and just being part of everything. Getting to know a really kind, humble people, just giving. And I can't speak on the experience enough, to be honest with you. I did a lot of partying at that time. Also, it was just a mixed bag. I was still just lost, but I was discovering things, and I was slowly kind of building myself back up. Still pretty empty, but just surviving, really learning discipline, really implementing and exploring. And that kind of seemed to help kind of inspire me a little bit. Um, Helped me to keep going, anyways. So I took a trip in that time period to the Philippines. Something that really affected me. I still think about it to this day. It was, it was with my partner. We went and we were just kind of a vacation vibe. We just went there, hang out and see what was going on, exploring South Asia. And we took a trip there, and it was eye-opening. I don't know if that's the right verbiage or adjective, for what I experienced. I had never seen poverty on that level. It was, I want to say disturbing, but much more than that, just, I really can't describe it. But I had never before seen poverty like that. Entire families living on cardboard boxes with no clothes. I mean, that's a level of poverty and a level of that I had never even considered in my mind. And that really affected me. I really started to see how lucky I was, and it started to lift me a little bit out of my self-pity and depression. I realized, it didn't matter how bad things got for me. And I would look around at these people, and they were so, happy. They're walking around, in some cases without any clothing and starving, and they still had a smile on their face. The children still laughed. They still played. I had no answer for that. It started to make me feel foolish about, my expectations for my life, and just, how I was feeling sorry for myself. And so it kind of helped me to man up a little bit and just really see life and the world for what it was, and how fortunate I was, and we all are. From there, I kept exploring. I made my way across South Asia, Malaysia, Singapore, Cambodia, Laos, Vietnam, and was just fascinated by the culture of servitude and kindness. And obviously there are bad people and rotten intentions everywhere in every country, but overall, I was very impressed and just taken aback by the way I was treated and the people I met there. A lot of good people. I had met a nice person there, kind and giving. She knew the meaning of respect and servitude, like I mentioned. And I don't mean that in a derogatory way. I really do mean that in just a caring and empathetic way. And it didn't work out, and it just for whatever reasons, she was a little bit too young. I was just, there were so many complications, different countries, and just ended up not working out. But, it was a learning and growing experience. And, it wasn't the most, I'm kind of making it sound like it was easy, but the breakup was disappointing, for sure. I was very disappointed. I had high hopes, because I had found someone that was pretty kind, and I could see, well, this is different. I'm not used to kindness and being treated this way, and I was like, I like it, but it didn't end well, and I was heartbroken because of it, for sure. Like every relationship and in every thing I set my mind to, I had given it 100%, and it was not successful, So that started to compound into, more failure in that area. And I started to really feel down about that, put pressure on myself, and just wondering why, like, what was wrong with me? Why did everything that I care about or try to do seem to fail? I did find the answer to that later, but at the time I was just lost. I just had no answers for that. I wanted to know why. Why did it seem easy for other people? Why did some people meet, the love of their life, it seemed, and right out of high school, and here I am, just wandering the earth, just failure after failure. I remember the last moment of it. I had come back to an empty hotel room. We had had an argument, and she had disappeared. And I was crushed. I was really crushed. I was just struck by, it's painful, it was a painful experience. I was extremely depressed about it. And I was really being attacked in that moment. I remember sitting in the hotel room and just, the disappointment was earth-shattering. And in myself and just the whole thing, felt like such a failure, and Satan used that opportunity to really attack me. I could hear, and this might seem very uncomfortable or scary to hear for some people, but I started to hear a voice, somewhere in the back of my mind, you're a failure, man. You're never gonna succeed at any of that. You're never gonna find love. You're lost. No one wants you. There's no place that you can call home. And if you jumped out that window right there, no one would even notice. No one would miss you. And that really scared me. I was scared. It was just, looking back, at the time I thought it was my voice. Looking back at it now, I know unequivocally that it wasn't. That was the influence of Satan speaking to me, trying to break me, win and take my soul for himself. So I did my go-to move, and reached out to my parents. I reached out to one close friend who really helped me see that I wasn't the only one that felt that way sometimes. But back to my parents, they prayed with me on the phone, and the voice disappeared. The temptation of that was gone. And I put my big boy pants on and headed to the airport and went back to Canada. When I got back to Canada, I spent some time with family. I stayed with family for a while. Not too long, maybe a few months, and then I got that feeling again. The ants in my pants. I had to get out. I had to move. Let's go. So I jumped on a plane and spun the globe. Closed my eyes, put my finger down. South America, Ecuador. All right. Well, that's where I'm going. It was as simple as that for me at the time. So I booked a flight with no plan, knowing nobody there that I thought. I didn't think I knew anybody there. Turns out that I did later, but. And off I went. I flew there. I Airbnb'd a place, a nice condo and a compound, and with a nice family there. And I spent some time there, several months. I can't even remember how long it was. And it was an escape. I was running again. I didn't even know what I was running from. I just, for some reason, wanted isolation. I'm not sure even to this day if that was Satan kind of trying to isolate me, or if that was, the Holy Spirit trying to help me to grow, through isolation, through I could focus on myself, heal. I don't know. I'm not sure. But I know in the end, it was part of God's plan. It turned, regardless of what I did, it turned into his plan. So I traveled around South America. It was great. I climbed volcanoes. I seen the sights. I went to see these magnificent architectural structures, these churches that were it's so hard to even describe. These stone structures, they're like right out of the medieval ages, just castles towering. I remember one, I climbed and 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 I climbed, and in the city I was in, it was already 6,000 kilometers above sea level. And by the time I got to the top, I could barely breathe. I took some pictures of, it seemed like I could see halfway across the earth. I was so high, it was amazing. I remember seeing churches, magnificent churches with organs, with the old style, like Phantom of the Opera organs with the pipes that were 6 stories high. The organ itself probably the size of a house. Just fascinating things. And hot springs in the middle of the mountains next to a volcano, and just amazing experiences. And the family I stayed with, they were so kind. I don't know if they recognized I was in a bad place. I think they probably did. But they were so nice to me. And they took me under their wing, and they helped me, explore the culture, and cooked me food and brought me places. And I still talk to message once in a while with one of them, the son. And it was just, I'm thankful for them. They were very kind to me. I had a significant experience there. One day I had a friend call me, and it was a friend that lived next door to me back in the Shuswap in British Columbia, Canada. And the friend that had become really close, and his marriage had fallen apart. And he was in a bad place. I remember the phone call well. And he was desperate. I could hear it in his voice. Being an empath, you can kind of gather more information than maybe is being said, even over the phone. And I knew he was desperate. This was the first time I realized that I had a gift for healing. As damaged and as lost as I was, my empathy, my strong empathic abilities were really a gift to help others. I had these indications throughout my life, but this was one of the times where it was pretty obvious. And I spoke with this man, and I just spoke from the heart. And it was something I was familiar with, because I had gone through that recently, and I wasn't where he was, but I recognized it very clearly. It was easy for me to see. And I went through the steps that helped me survive, and what I knew at the time. I didn't have the full answer, but I did my best. And God allowed me to get to him, to speak to him, and allowed him to hear it. And he had told me, I'm not sure if it was in that same conversation or later on that conversation, and what I had told him had saved his life, and I take that, I give that glory to God. I take no credit from that, but I'm thankful. So from there I invited him out, my friend, and he came to visit me in South America, in Ecuador, and he stayed with me in the condo, and we did some exploring together, and had some quality bro time, you know. And I feel like when he went home, he was strong enough. He was like a kind and generous man, and I miss him. But he went home, and shortly after that, I did also. Well, I went home, and before I got home, he had messaged me and said, "Hey, you know what? Why don't you come back here and just stay with me?" He still had the house in the shoe shop that, you know, he used to live beside me. So he said, "Come stay with me." You know, his wife was no longer there, and you know, he was lonely also. So he's like, "Come on, man, come out here, stay with me. We'll figure this out." And I said, "All right, sounds like a plan." And off I went back to Canada, and that's what we did. And we helped each other. We talked with each other. Unfortunately, we did a fair bit of drinking together at the time also. But, you know, we were there for each other. And we got through it because of that. I'm convinced of that for sure. After a while, my friend had to sell his house. So we decided to move to Kelowna together. We found a place together. And it was during the crash of oil in 2015, so there was just no work. So for the first time in my entire life, I had to find a 9 to 5 job. And I can tell you, for anyone who doesn't have a regular job, and if something happens to that and they do find themselves having to get up every morning and go to work, like the bankers and the people in offices and whatnot, it's just there's probably not much worse than that. It's just absolute torture. But I started to live a 9 to 5, and during that time, you know, one day I had met a person who I think I was destined to encounter. But it was the beginning of a very, very dark time, the darkest time in my life. And if you have been watching my testimony, you might be thinking to yourself, "Oh, it gets worse." No, yes, it gets much worse. I had yet to experience rock bottom, and Satan had a lot of plans for me. He wasn't going to let me rebound from anything. So I had met this individual, and at first she had seemed very easygoing, relaxed and fun, and that's what I was looking for. I wasn't looking for anything heavy or, you know, diminishing, or I just wanted to have a casual and fun, you know, time and not think about it. And it was, from my perspective, it was we clicked, you know. I thought it was just like this perfect meeting in this perfect situation with the perfect type of individual. And I was pretty vulnerable at the time, obviously. And searching, you know, lonely and searching, but okay. You know, I had pulled my pants up enough, you know, metaphorically, where I was okay. I wasn't, you know, in deep depression, but I was still, you know, unhappy and lost, clearly, and just didn't know what I was doing, and still burdened, you know, but surviving. I had gotten into exercise again, and I was on the way up, you know, recovering. And this person, you know, really put up a very good front of who they were, and it was a complete, turned out to be a very complex deception. And this is my first encounter with the emotional range and differential of an empath and a narcissist. And I really started to learn about that and what they were, and how that affected me in my life. And what I learned was, you know, that someone like me as an empath is always going to attract a narcissistic character type. For one, I seek that out. An empath will seek people who are damaged because they want to fix them. Um, they want to heal them. They want to fix them. So I wasn't that wasn't revealed to me at first, but it didn't take long before the masquerade quickly vanished. And of course, it was after, you know, we had settled in together and moved in and were living together, and suddenly the mask came off, and this person started to reveal who they truly were. And now I don't want to come across like I am slandering anyone, but even this individual, because everyone is who they are for a reason. They got there and they followed a certain path in their life, and sometimes that path goes deep into dark valleys, and when they come back out of those, they may never come back out of those, and they're different people, and they're changed and they're damaged. And so I don't want to come off seeming like really judgmental, but all I can do is speak to what happened and be as honest as I can be. So this individual came to reveal a very damaged, emotionally traumatized person. Had experienced a lot of abuse, and that was revealed to me over the course of the relationship. And this person, the more I got to know them, I realized that they were so very enrooted in darkness. There's a lot of darkness that followed this person around, and a lot of there was a lot of drug abuse and alcoholism, and it was just it started to spiral quickly. What was fun and easy and relaxed at first turned into tense, dark, troubled, and it only went one way down. It was increasingly intense and increasingly dark, and the more I stayed in it, the more control she sought after, and she discovered, as most narcissists do, they use tactics to abuse you, to keep you there, to control you, to keep you uneasy. They want to keep their victim as unstable as possible, because they view that as easier victim to control. They would, use tools like gaslighting and just, I can give you some of the things that that I experienced. So, this person would I would never know if the relationship was gonna last or even in any moment, and I never felt secure in it, and it was purposeful. Going as far as leaving a packed suitcase by the door. And just never letting me breathe, never let me relax, never let me have any kind of security at all of any kind. The more I poured in to this relationship and this person, the more they took and the less they gave, and it became increasingly more intense. The abuse started. There were moments of savage drunkenness and rage. I never experienced any rage like that before in another person. Just extreme anger built up from a lot of trauma and pain, and as an empath, it was like a trap, because I see that, and it was like I could not give up on that. I felt like I had to, or obligated to, stick with this person and heal them and fix them, and I felt like these other people had abandoned this person, and I was determined not to. But the person knew that and used that as a tool to keep me there. And after a certain amount of time, it really starts to break down a person's psyche and emotional structure. It was a nightmare. It was a nightmare, and it was a slow burn. It was just like being tortured slowly, like someone slowly pulling off your fingernails. It was just agonizing, and I felt trapped. I couldn't get out. I knew I was in so much pain, but I couldn't do anything about it. Um, and, I felt like I couldn't do anything about it, but that was a lie. I was being told by Satan, I was being told by this person, you're nothing, you're this, you're that, and it was just to weaken me, to break me down, to destroy every bit of confidence, every bit of joy, every bit of ability, and drive me into a deep depression, deepest I had ever felt. And she was successful in that for several years until it came to a very ugly halt. It came into a situation where the oil field started to kick up again, and I had work away out of town. So I would leave, and this person would make my life miserable. I was never gone for very long before she had created enough drama or excuses for that I would have to come home. So I was never able to really work or get ahead. I couldn't stabilize my life. It was just constant trauma, toxicity, and issues over and over and over. And it would just weaken me and weaken me and weaken me and weaken me. And as empaths, we have to be very careful not to empty our cup, because it's dangerous. We become very, very low very easily, and it's a dangerous proposition for any empath. But I was as low as it could go, and contemplated life daily at the end. It all came to a head one day when I left for work and came back to this individual with all her stuff packed, and some man in my living room sitting there. It's like the worst case nightmare scenario, right? Like I can see, like, dozens of people cringing that this has happened to, or imagining that this was happening to them, how they might handle it. Well, I'll tell you that I didn't handle it very well. I snapped out of my mind, and violence ensued for sure. This is not something that I am proud of. It was one of my worst moments. Some of you might be out there thinking, no, this was an ugly moment, and just something I'm ashamed of, just, there's no justification for it, but I was extremely violent with this person who she was with, and, threw him out of my house, and, the breakup ensued from there. That was the last day that I had actually seen her. She left that day, and left me with just a mess. The place that we shared was destroyed. The furniture was broken and stained, the glass all over the floor, ashes and drinks spilt, and just everything was destroyed and just nasty. Everything was, not only was it filthy and destroyed like that, I had to move, within a day or so. That was had the plan, so I was coming home to do that, and what a scenario. And through it all, through the toxic, return home, and that event that happened, I was all beat up, and I was bleeding, not from the man, actually. It was from my partner, who had just gone crazy violent, and I was bleeding from my eyes and my knees and my elbows, and was I couldn't hear. Both my eardrums were, she had boxed my ears. It just is really something else. The RCMP there wanted, begged me to press charges, and I was just too much of a man to do anything like that, and I just brushed it off, like, men don't press charges kind of thing, and something I don't agree with today, but that's the way I felt then. So it was pretty ugly. I packed up all my stuff, moved my stuff to my friend's house, and in Vancouver, and moved in, with my parents for a while to really tuck my tail between my legs and try to make sense of all of this. The home was definitely a place of darkness. There was evil in the home. The violence, the trauma, the toxicity. There was a spiritual war going on there. It was fighting. It had won with her, and it was trying to conquer me too. That darkness was heavy. I felt so heavy when I was there. The weight was undescribable. And if you've ever been in a demonic situation where there's an oppression or some attachment with someone, you will notice the same thing. A real heavy weight of, it's hard to describe, but it's thick. You can feel it when you're there, but it's not there when you're not there. I would see these moments of just these extreme rage moments where, when you see someone's eyes and they don't, there's nothing in there. There's something else though. The stuff that I went through in that time, I don't want to get into too much because it's very painful to me. It brings back a lot of, and not painful in a way of like it's still a wound, just as an empath, it's draining on me emotionally to remember it. Just to recall it is a drain. That's how of a traumatic event these things were. I remember her speaking like just as a different person, growling and just thrashing and violent, and I'd have to hold her from scratching my eyes out and just gnashing her teeth and just craziness. Like I had to lock myself in rooms sometimes, and she would try to beat the door down with furniture. There was an evil attachment there. And I recognized it, but it made me want to save her more. It was just crazy. No thought of myself. I was like willing to sacrifice myself. Like it blows my mind now, So it's very important as an empath to set limits for everybody, even your closest friends and partners. You can never allow yourself to be emptied. And there's some key things that I know how to do now that where I never get empty. And like it was all part of a big evil plan. Turns out that, at the time my parents were gone. I had no support system. They were across the country. They were visiting their family, and I was by myself. And the only family member I had that was anywhere nearby was one of my sisters. And we had a tumultuous relationship throughout our lives. And she basically turned her back right on me. Had refused to help me. Actually went out of her way to make it worse. And I have no hard feelings about it, but at the time it was a big blow. I was rock bottom, and it felt like my own family member had just stomped on my head, while I was down. But forgiveness is key to being forgiven. So all that is meaningless to me now. So my survival tactics were the same as I always had. They had been. I started to train like a savage. Training, living at my parents and just really trying to find myself and figure out what I'm doing with myself. Training. I trained so hard. I don't think I'd ever been in better shape in my entire life than that year. Just 3 days, and I was very successful in martial arts at that time also. I used the pain that from my experiences to fuel me. It was what I knew this is what I knew to do to survive. It was everything I could do. It's all I knew, so I did it with everything I had. So I'm gonna make it through this. I'm gonna live through this. I'm gonna come back. And so that's how I knew how to do it. So I gave everything 100% to it. And it led me to more confidence. It helped me for sure, as I'm very grateful for martial arts and the influence it's had in my life. It's continually, before I knew God, saved me. And God uses a lot of things. He uses things like that. He uses animals to help us, to heal us, to give us comfort. There's a lot of different things. I believe He put that in my life for a reason, as a tool. Um, you know, but I was very numb. I was a numb person. I felt nothing. I found myself trying to not be lonely and find relationships, and I found out quickly, after a few attempts, that no. All I was going to do here was, the old adage, hurt other people. Well, yeah, it was, I quickly realized I could not be doing that. I needed to be isolated and to take care of myself first. I hurt a couple people, and I was like, oh no, I don't want to be that person. I don't want to hurt others. I know what that's like, and I realized quickly I needed to change. So off I went. I found a job with a company in the U.S., in North Dakota, and off I went. I moved to North Dakota, and I spent the next 2 years, year and a half, really isolated there. And if anybody knows anything about North Dakota, it's pretty isolated. If you want to be isolated, that's the place you go. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, I went there, and I spent a lot of time thinking and feeling sorry for myself at first. I was sad, and I was just up to no good. When you're sad and you have no guidance, what do you do? Idle hands. I'm just up to no good and just being ridiculous, and online, and just trying all sorts of things, but training and surviving, just living. It wasn't happily living or anything, but just living. And eventually, I just started to look for answers, and I really started to think about what had happened in my life with this relationship. Throughout my life, I had to spend a lot of time pondering my life. And I had met an individual who ended up being a key person in my life, Pastor Casper. But I'll get into that a little later. But I started to really ponder and try to figure out what had happened, and go through every relationship that I had had, and how things didn't work out, and why, and what was the causes. And I'm really started to look at myself for the first time honestly. Like, okay, it can't always be and everything be other people. It has to be some things that I'm doing myself. And why am I like this? I'm ultra sensitive. Why did I stay in that last relationship so long and torture myself, and allow myself to get to that point? And then this was the first time I'd really put together who I was as an empath, who this individual was that I was in a relationship with, who was a narcissist, and the relationship between the two. I started to study and learn about it. And I learned a great deal. And once I understood and learned a lot about this scale of emotional structure, I really started to make sense, and I started to see my empathy. First, I realized that I was an empath, and then I realized what it was, how it affected me, and why I did the things I did. And then things started to make sense, and I was, oh, okay. And then I realized, and this was a game changer, all my whole life I had thought it was a weakness, caring about people, or being soft or sensitive. I was hiding that stuff my entire life. And then all of a sudden, hey, what you thought was a weakness is a gift. Well, dang. That's a game changer. That changed everything for me. That was an eye-opener, and it really opened up my mind to searching for other answers. Once I kind of realized that, this was a gift. It was given to me by God, and I can use it for good, not to hurt myself, but to help others. And I learned how to manage my empathy to stay healthy. I figured some things out. And I will make more videos about these kind of topics. Everything I've learned after part 3 will be in shorts. I'll put out little shorts. Don't worry, I won't kill you with these hour-long videos anymore. Anyways, so yeah. And off we went, learning. I phoned my parents up one day and I said, hey, can you send me a Bible? At first it was more of a thing like I just wanna, a bucket list thing. Like, I grew up a Christian and I want to say I read the Bible and blah, 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 blah. And I just was like, send me a Bible, I'm going to read it. But I was searching, I started to read. I chose the New Testament to start, and I started to read the New Testament. And I read. And I would find myself getting really emotional when I was reading it, and I didn't really know why. I was just like, this is weird. Oh, my light died. Sorry, guys. Kicking it with no light. But I started to really read and really be touched. I was getting emotional. There was nothing specific that I was getting emotional about, but it was really, I was like, what's going on here? Like, this is, and it's because I was started to read the Bible for the first time with a truly open mind, searching with specific intent. If you get what I mean, just really like, is there something in here? And if there is, I want to see it and I want to hear it. So for myself, so I started to read. I started to read. And I got to a verse that really changed everything for me. Matthew 11:28-30. And I later on memorized this, and I'm not going to recite it for you, but I will probably have it scrolling at the top of the screen here while I'm saying this. But it changed my life. When I read that verse about heavy burdens and giving those burdens over to Christ, that he was asking us to do that, and that we didn't need to feel the weight. And that really connected with me because I had been so weighted down. I felt just with my own guilt and failures and disappointments, I was so heavy. I felt like I was moving through molasses, quicksand. I couldn't, trapped, sinking, and there was just nothing stopping it. That weight was unbearable. And I read that verse, and it was transcended. After I read it, I cried. I remember crying I wept. There's a big difference. There's a difference between crying and weeping. It wasn't sadness. I wasn't crying because I was sad or happy. It was just such a relief of the anxiety and the weight that I felt. There was just no other reaction that I could muster. I just wept for a good time, and after I was done, it was gone. Every single bit of it. The weight, the anxiety, the disappointment, the oppression, every bit of damage that had been done in my previous relationship, and everyone before that, and the accumulation throughout my life, all the things that I was so disappointed about, every lie that Satan heaped on my shoulders and told me, you're not good enough, you're this, you're that, every fake justification I made for myself just fell to the ground. And it all melted. All the guilt I felt for all the wrong disappeared. And the relief and joy that came after, priceless. Then I realized how lied to I'd been, my whole life. When I started to read the Bible, it was, if I'm really honest with you, and you may experience this also, it was awkward. It wasn't necessarily easy. It was, it's not like I was reading a novel or whatever. The language was not what I was used to, and it wasn't easy. But I stuck with it. I used the discipline that martial arts gave me, and I had kind of taught myself. I used that, and I applied it to this, to learning and to reading and to, if you're going to give anything a shot, if you really want anything to work, if you want to succeed at anything, you'll have to apply a certain amount of discipline. And you're going to have to, at times you're not going to feel like it, you're going to have to force yourself, and I did. There were days, I set a schedule for myself. I said, I will read this Bible every day, no matter what. I will read at least 2 to 4 chapters every day, and I will pray every day. So after that, I started to pray, and I started to read every day, and that's when, my world started to melt in a good way. All the things that I didn't like about myself, about my life, started to melt and change, and morph into something else. At first, there was things that God took away from me very quickly, just like boop, 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 and those things were gone, and I was just like, wow, like, holy cow, and there's other things that I was, that took a lot longer, and there was things that I was worried about that were insignificant that just kind of happened on their own. There was things, in the beginning I was trying to force things, like, because of some of these things were taken away from me so quickly, I was just like, well, why isn't everything just perfect now? And I had some growing up to do, life isn't like that, and a relationship with God isn't like that. It's never going to be easy. It's never going to be a cakewalk, because life is not like that. This world is full of sin, and there's no escaping that. But we have, a best friend. So it was an interesting time, and the things that I would worry about not being able to change ended up being effortless to change when I stopped trying to force some things that just kind of happened on their own, and I began to evolve. I think in the beginning you want to like run, and your Christian life is a stroll. So don't get disappointed, if everything just doesn't snap into place instantly. You're going to receive peace immediately. And if you're diligent and if you're disciplined, you will slowly morph into something else. It takes time. So don't lose faith, and don't be impatient, and don't give up. Stick with the discipline. Stick with God. It's the only way. So at that point in my life, I knew I had found the key. I had found the key, and I had found a friend, a best friend, Yeshua. And I started to really look at it that way. And the more I started to look at it that way, the more things changed. The closer I got, I grew spiritually very fast. I started to crave knowledge. And I started to read and read and read. And I was just YouTube videos and just everything I could get my hands on, I devoured. And that continued on for a long time. I felt like I had been behind, and I felt like I had the key now, and I wanted to just open that door, kick that sucker open, and just throw myself through it, because, I give everything 100% once I know that's what I want. So I gave everything to it, and I truly experienced a miracle. That was a miracle. 40 years, I'd never felt relief. Never once. There was better times and ups and downs, but they were so big swings of joy, but they were false. They were fake. They were just distractions. I never felt any, even in the high moments, I never felt any true peace, if I was honest with myself. They were just masked and covered and, it's almost like adrenaline, but when the adrenaline goes away, it's just, right, okay. Yeah, you're still the same person, you're still unhappy, and that weight's still there. It's probably even worse now. So, I just experienced such a relief, and I'm so thankful for that experience and me being led to Christ, the Spirit working in me, and just me realizing who I was and what my purpose is. And if you're all wondering what my purpose is, well, one of them is this: speaking to you, because I know I can share the pain I've been through and some of the experiences I've been through with others. I'm not the only one. And I pray every day that God sends me the weak, the oppressed, the depressed, so that I can share what I went through. And this is why I'm doing this. There's no other reason. And I get people come to me now because of that prayer, randomly, all the time. They just randomly message me and DM me or this or that, and ask me questions, or look, I need help, this is happening to me. And God gives me the answers. He gave me the experiences, and He gives me the words in the moment. So this is why I'm here, and this is why we speak. So I really want to, just end with a quick prayer and a blessing to everyone who might see this. If you're hurt, if you're lost, if you need something and you don't know what, if you're running, if you're looking, if you're searching, if you've never been quite happy and there's just something not right, the answer is right in front of you. God is waiting for you to reach out to Him. Just open the door. Hey, God bless you all. Lord, bless everyone who watches this video. Be with them. Send the Spirit to guide them and usher in healing like only you can do. In Jesus' name, amen.